In Milan this week, the presence of a former college athlete from Iowa at a premier fashion event signaled a significant shift in sports marketing. Caitlin Clark's transition from the basketball court to the Prada front row was not merely an off-season appearance, but a calculated business maneuver. Her positioning among Academy Award winners and technology executives like Mark Zuckerberg served as a clear indicator of her trajectory. Prada's invitation to the front row is a strategic allocation of cultural capital. By placing Clark in this specific seat, the brand aligned her with the most powerful figures in global sports. When excluding team owners and executives, Clark is currently positioned as a primary figure in sports influence. This placement was a deliberate signal to global brands that her impact has moved beyond basketball into broader cultural dominance. The strategy became clearer through her proximity to Eileen Go. As a six-time Olympic medalist and the face of brands such as Louis Vuitton and Gucci, Go represents a specific tier of sports marketing. Placing Clark and Go in the same frame was a move by Prada to categorize Clark within the global elite. While Go remains a controversial figure for her decision to compete for China despite being raised in the United States, her standing in the luxury sector is established. By pairing them, Prada framed Clark as a Western counterpart to a global phenomenon, moving her beyond the traditional reach of the WNBA. As Clark's profile rises in Europe, the domestic market presents a different narrative for her contemporaries. Reports indicate a growing disparity between social media influence and retail performance. While Angel Reese has successfully cultivated a Bayou Barbie persona and a significant online following, industry data suggests her signature Reebok products are underperforming. Merchandise has been documented in discount outlets, highlighting the difficulty of converting social media engagement into consistent consumer sales. Corporate investment patterns reflect this divide. While Reebok reassesses its approach, Nike is reportedly assembling a $28 million investment for Clark's signature line. Major corporations like Gatorade and State Farm are treating Clark as a historical anomaly rather than a standard endorsement. Wilson Sporting Goods has launched a signature line for her, marking the first time the company has made such an investment in an athlete since Michael Jordan. This decision, alongside State Farm signing its first female athlete endorser in its century-long history, suggests these organizations view her as a permanent fixture in the sports landscape. The broader economic impact is visible in the WNBA's recent media rights deal, valued at $2.2 billion, 4 times the previous agreement. Market analysts attribute this valuation directly to the Clark effect, which has introduced a new demographic to the league and resulted in sold-out arenas for teams across the country. Throughout this period of growth, Clark's brand strategy has remained disciplined. While other players engage in social media discourse, Clark has focused on high-level partnerships and a potential Netflix documentary series. By maintaining this posture, she has effectively bypassed the debates regarding her status. The events in Milan confirm that the fashion and luxury industries have already reached a conclusion. Clark is being treated as a global commodity before her second professional season has even commenced. As the WNBA prepares for 2026, the focus is no longer on Clark's ability to perform, but on whether the rest of the industry can match the pace of her commercial ascent. The financial infrastructure supporting professional women's sports underwent a fundamental change long before the first whistle of the current season. For decades, the primary hurdle for the WNBA was a perceived lack of scalability, a narrative that suggested the audience was fixed and the growth potential was capped. That ceiling was effectively removed during the 2024 collegiate season, creating a momentum that has now forced a complete restructuring of the league's operational logistics. One of the most immediate indicators of this shift was the implementation of a full-time charter flight program for all 12 teams. This was not a luxury addition, it was a mandatory response to the security and recovery requirements of athletes who were suddenly operating under the same public scrutiny as high-level NBA stars. The cost of this transition, estimated at $25 million over 2 years, was once considered an insurmountable expense. It is now viewed as a baseline requirement for a league that has seen its valuation surge into the billions. The economic impact is most visible in the sudden inflation of expansion fees. When the Golden State Valkyries were announced as the league's 13th team, the entry price signaled a new era of investor confidence. Previous expansion efforts were often characterized by a search for stability. The current environment is defined by a search for equity. The league's plan to reach 16 teams by 2028 is no longer a speculative goal, but a response to a surplus of high-net-worth individuals and ownership groups attempting to buy into the market before the entry price doubles again. This influx of capital is being driven by data showing that women's basketball is currently the most efficient vehicle for brand growth in the North American sports market. This efficiency is rooted in the demographic shift of the viewership. Data from major broadcasters indicates that the current audience is not just larger but younger and more engaged with digital commerce than the traditional sports viewer. This has led to a reconfiguration of media rights. The current agreement, which involves partners like Disney, Amazon, and NBC, places women's basketball on the same technical and promotional footing as the men's game. For the first time, games are being scheduled for maximum visibility rather than being relegated to secondary windows. This change in programming has resulted in a feedback loop. Higher visibility leads to higher ratings, which in turn justifies higher advertising rates. In several instances, regular season games featuring the Indiana Fever outperformed NBA playoff games and Major League Baseball broadcasts in the same time slots. While much of the focus remains on the Indiana market, the commercial lift is distributed across the entire league. The Clark effect functions as a rising tide for rival franchises that are seeing record-breaking ticket sales when the Fever come to town. Teams like the Washington Mystics and the Las Vegas Aces have moved games from their standard arenas to much larger NBA-sized venues to accommodate the demand. In Chicago, the arrival of new talent like Camila Cardoso and the existing marketing presence of Angel Reese has created a secondary center of gravity. This has transformed the WNBA from a league with a few isolated stars into a competitive ecosystem where every matchup has a marketable narrative. The divergence in marketing strategies between these players is becoming a case study for sports business analysts. The villain arc strategy, often attributed to Reese and other players who lean into competitive friction, has proven effective for social media engagement and short-term viral growth. However, the blue-chip strategy employed by Clark's team focuses on long-term institutional stability and cross-generational appeal. While social media metrics can be volatile, the endorsement of entities like State Farm and Gatorade suggests a preference for a brand that can move products across all 50 states and multiple age brackets. This is the difference between an influencer and a cultural institution. The data suggests that while controversy generates clicks, reliability generates long-term contracts. This institutional reliability is what prompted Wilson Sporting Goods to revisit a strategy they had not used in 3 decades. The release of a signature basketball line is a significant capital investment that requires a high degree of certainty regarding a player's longevity. By choosing Clark, Wilson indicated that they see her as the modern equivalent of the athletes who built the sneaker and equipment industries in the 1980s. This is not just about selling a ball, it is about establishing a piece of equipment as an icon of a specific era. The last time a single player had this much influence over equipment sales, the league they played in was still struggling to reach a global audience. The global aspirations of the league are now more realistic than ever before. The WNBA is actively looking at international markets, with exhibition games and potential regular season openers in cities like London, Paris, and Toronto. The goal is to replicate the NBA's global footprint by positioning these athletes as international icons. The presence of international players has always been a strength of the league, but the current marketing engine is finally capable of exporting the product back to those home markets with the same level of polish seen in the United States. However, this rapid growth has created internal tensions that the league must now navigate. The upcoming negotiation of the collective bargaining agreement will be a defining moment for the sport. Players are aware that the revenue pie has expanded significantly, and they are seeking a deal that reflects their status as the primary drivers of that value. Issues like salary caps, revenue sharing, and retirement benefits are at the forefront of these discussions. The league office is tasked with balancing the need to satisfy the players with the need to reinvest capital into the infrastructure required to sustain this growth. This includes better training facilities, dedicated practice courts, and improved medical staffs for every franchise. The transition from a subsidized league to a self-sustaining commercial powerhouse is also changing the way the NBA views its investment. For years, the NBA provided the financial backstop that allowed the WNBA to operate. That dynamic is shifting as the WNBA begins to generate its own massive returns. The relationship is moving toward a true partnership where both leagues benefit from shared resources and cross-promotion. The success of the three-point challenge between Caitlin Clark and Steph Curry was a proof of concept for this integrated future. It showed that the audience does not view these as two separate worlds, but as two different expressions of the same elite skill set. This integration is also affecting the youth sports landscape. participation in girls' basketball has seen a measurable spike in regions where WNBA teams are located. The Clark effect is often cited by coaches and athletic directors as a reason for increased interest at the middle school and high school levels. This creates a larger talent pool for the future, ensuring that the level of play on the court will continue to rise as the league expands. The athletes of the next decade will have grown up in a world where a career in professional basketball is not just a dream, but a viable, high-paying career path. The current era is also defined by the sophistication of the content being produced around the game. Media companies are no longer just reporting scores. They are producing high-end documentaries, behind-the-scenes series, and deep-dive analytical content. This storytelling adds layers of context to the competition, making the fans feel more connected to the players' journeys. When a fan watches a game now, they aren't just watching a sports match. They are watching the latest chapter in a multi-year narrative that they have followed through social media, streaming platforms, and traditional news outlets. As the 2026 season approaches, the focus is shifting toward the sustainability of this momentum. There is always a risk of a sophomore slump, both on the court and in the ratings. However, the structural changes made by the league and its partners suggest a confidence that this is not a temporary trend. The investment in technology, data analytics, and global marketing is designed to ensure that even if the initial novelty fades, the core business remains robust. The league is betting that the audience it has captured over the last 24 months is a permanent one. The disparity in retail performance between different stars remains a point of high interest for market analysts. The bargain bin reality for some products serves as a reminder that brand power is not a guarantee of commercial success. It requires alignment of the right product, the right message, and the right athlete. As the market becomes more crowded with signature shoes and apparel lines, only those who can maintain a consistent connection with their audience will survive the inevitable shakeout. This competitive environment is forcing brands to be more creative and more authentic in their collaborations. The legal and regulatory environment is also evolving to keep pace with these changes. The NIL era in college sports was the catalyst that allowed players like Clark to build their brands before they ever stepped onto a professional court. This pre-branding has changed the way rookies enter the league. They are no longer unknown entities looking for their first break. They are established businesses with existing contracts and a loyal following. The WNBA is now learning how to integrate these massive personal brands into the collective brand of the league. The geographical footprint of the league is also being reconsidered. While the traditional markets in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago remain important, the success of the Indiana Fever has shown that a single player can turn a mid-sized market into a national focal point. This opens the door for future expansion into cities that may not have been considered 10 years ago. Markets like Charlotte, Kansas City, and Denver are now being evaluated for their potential to support a franchise, provided they have the right mix of local ownership and fan engagement. The role of the old guard in this transition cannot be overlooked. Players who have been the face of the league for a decade are now finding themselves in a new reality. Some have embraced the change, recognizing that the increased attention benefits everyone. Others have expressed frustration with the way the narrative has shifted so heavily toward the newcomers. This tension is a natural part of any industry undergoing a rapid transformation. It creates a passing of the torch dynamic that is compelling for fans and adds a layer of competitive intensity to every game. Ultimately, the story of this era of women's basketball is a story of economic realization. It is the moment when the market finally caught up to the talent on the court. The front-row seats in Milan, the multi-million-dollar sneaker deals, and the sold-out arenas are all symptoms of a larger shift in the way society values women's sports. The debate over whether the interest is sustainable has been replaced by a discussion on how to manage the growth. The infrastructure is being built, the capital is being deployed, and the audience has arrived. The next few years will determine the ultimate scale of this transformation. If the current trajectory continues, the WNBA will move from being a successful niche league to a cornerstone of the global sports economy. This will have implications far beyond the basketball court, influencing how brands approach female consumers and how other women's sports leagues structure their own growth. The template is being written in real time by an athlete from Iowa and the league that was ready for her arrival. The shift is permanent, the impact is global, and the market has only just begun to react to the new reality. In this new landscape, the distinction between a sports star and a cultural icon has disappeared, replaced by a new kind of athlete who is as comfortable in a boardroom or a fashion show as she is on the hardwood. The game has changed, the court has expanded, and the front row is no longer just for the spectators. It is the new home of the league's most powerful assets.